Welcome back to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a deeply rooted historical taboo that has haunted the American Southwest for centuries. It's this incredible intersection between an eerie, unsolved mystery and documented anthropological fact. We're looking at a specific entity embedded in Navajo or Diné oral tradition that literally forced a complete academic dead end. Seriously, this is one of the only subjects in American ethnographic literature where academic self-censorship isn't just some fringe rumor, it is the actual, peer-acknowledged record.
Let's start with the precise, unsettling translation for this entity, which unfortunately gets carelessly lumped into modern campfire monster stories or internet lore as the Skinwalker. In the Navajo language, the specific term is naaldlooshii, which translates to, by means of it, it goes on all fours. Now, we aren't talking about a cryptid or a mythical beast here. This is a deeply serious, fiercely protected figure tied to the deliberate perversion of sacred spiritual power.
And this brings us to a chilling realization that really frames our entire investigation. Why is it that practitioners of ethnobotany, sociology, and anthropology have consistently refused to record this phenomenon in full? Every single time researchers got close, they hit a sudden, invisible wall. The silence surrounding this topic isn't an accident. As you're going to see, it's a meticulously maintained boundary.
Section 1. The entity on all fours. What's absolutely fascinating here is the terrifying consistency of the behavioral and sensory rules reported by completely unconnected informants. In Clyde Kluckhohn's landmark 1944 University of New Mexico study, Navajo Witchcraft, he noted a startling uniformity. People from geographically isolated communities across Utah, Arizona, Colorado, and New Mexico all described the exact same sensory details. An entity running on all fours in the dead of night, wearing the skins of wolves, coyotes, or bears. They describe figures naked except for these pelts, their faces meticulously painted, yellow on the chin, black on the nose, blue on the mouth, white on the forehead, with their bodies spotted in white clay. The behavioral rules were so incredibly consistent that anthropologist W. Hill flagged it in a suppressed appendix to his 1936 fieldwork notes. He pointed out that this encounter grammar matched absolutely no other regional mythological tradition in its sheer precision.
Section 2. The Wall of Silence.
But here's where things get really weird. Whenever trained field researchers pursue detailed testimony on these encounters, they hit an identical sudden threshold. Indigenous informants, and eventually the anthropologists themselves, realized that pursuing this knowledge carried a visceral psychological danger. Kluckhohn noted that the very moment researchers asked for deep, specific details, sources would suddenly fall completely silent and withdraw their consent to be interviewed. One of Kluckhohn's informants just flat out said, "People don't tell out about them. They keep these things."
This silence definitely wasn't mere reluctance or a simple desire for privacy. It was a necessary survival tactic, driven by genuine dread of supernatural retaliation. The prevailing belief, documented in the few surviving field notes we actually have, was that if they know someone gossiped, they will witch the gossiper. To even speak of the naaldlooshii was to attract its attention. The academics studying them recognized the profound terror this caused their subjects, and honestly, out of ethical obligation and maybe a lingering sense of unease, the researchers chose to self-censor. They literally just stopped asking.
Section 3. Tracing the historical trail.
To prove this isn't just some modern internet creepypasta born out of recent pop culture fascination, we have to trace the archival paper trail back hundreds of years. This terrifying entity has lurked on the historical periphery of the Southwest for centuries. The phenomenon itself has no datable originating event, and there's no single identifiable victim. Yet it appears in Spanish colonial suppression records as early as 1626, when Father Zarte Zalmaran first documented the Navajos. Throughout the centuries of Spanish Inquisition records targeting native spiritual practices, hints of this dark, shape-shifting magic remain this constant, shadowy thread.
The academic reality of this suppression is deeply embedded in archival repositories, like the University of New Mexico's Center for Southwest Research. Fun fact, this is actually where W. Hill's suppressed 1936 appendix is held today. These archives capture a really eerie reality, a massive, sprawling cultural phenomenon spanning centuries, carefully documented right up to the very edge of a dark abyss. And then, the records just abruptly stop.
Section 4. The Architecture of Secrecy.
Looking at neighboring communities, we see that guarding spiritual knowledge is absolutely essential to maintaining internal religious and social balance. You'll frequently see signs at places like Gemes Pueblo reminding outsiders that traditional knowledge is not an open book.
After centuries of outsider interference, public burnings of ceremonial objects, and literal witchcraft trials, secrecy became a vital defensive shield. But this secrecy is also directed inward.
In these traditions, knowledge of the ritual and spiritual world is literal power. Sharing this sensitive information with outsiders, or even uninitiated insiders, completely destroys community harmony. It actively depreciates the potency of the magic and unleashes destructive forces. So, disclosing the secrets of the naaldlooshii doesn't just invite a monster to your door. It disrupts an ancient, fragile cosmic order that has been kept in balance since ancestral times.
Section 5. The corruption of medicine.
And this brings us to the true horror of the taboo. It's a horror that hits incredibly close to home for these communities. The ultimate terror isn't a feral beast hiding in the woods. It is a respected human being, often a healer or medicine man, who deliberately perverts sacred spiritual power to inflict harm. While a traditional medicine man learns to use power to restore K or harmony and protect against evil, the naaldlooshii violates the deepest laws of the Diné. They search for power through taboo acts, using manipulative magic to sow chaos, disease, and death. It's literally the ultimate betrayal from within.
You have to understand that in traditional Navajo medicine, the main cause of illness is often viewed not just as the presence of germs, but the absence of a positive psychological state. Fear itself is a primary cause of illness. Therefore, the very existence of these corrupted individuals and the intense dread they inspire is a direct assault on the psychological safety and spiritual health of the entire community. They wield fear as a weapon to make people sick. So to talk about them, to spread that fear, is to essentially do their dark work for them.
As modern media continues to distort these teachings into cheap horror mythology, think of the endless internet stories or TV shows about skinwalkers, we're constantly reminded by indigenous voices of exactly why this boundary exists. Adrienne Keene, a Cherokee Nation academic, hits the nail on the head. She says, "These are not things that need or should be discussed by outsiders at all. That's how our cultures survive. The silence isn't some puzzle waiting for modern sleuths to solve. It's a load-bearing wall holding up the survival of an entire culture."
I want to leave you with this final thought for our explainer today. By constantly demanding to peer into the darkness, by trying to drag this ancient, terrifying entity into the glaring light of pop culture, are we missing the point entirely? Are we, in our modern obsession to uncover the unknown, inviting the very psychological destruction and fear that this centuries-old wall of silence was painstakingly built to keep out? Thanks for joining me to explore the fascinating, unsettling depths of this historical record. Keep questioning, but remember, some secrets are kept for a reason.